In today's interconnected world, not all users are employees. As a security leader, you're responsible for ensuring that third-party individuals, vendors, consultants, and contractors are held to the same security standards as your internal workforce. If you overlook this, you risk introducing shadow access, data leakage, or weak compliance into your environment. In this lecture, you'll learn how to define, enforce, and monitor security expectations through contracts and controls that protect your organization, even when the people working for you don't technically work for you. Before a vendor, consultant, or contractor ever touches your systems or accesses your data, you need to ensure that their agreement clearly defines their security responsibilities. This is your first line of defense when granting access to individuals who operate outside your organizational boundaries. Start by specifying allowable access and system use. You must clearly document what systems third parties are permitted to access, under what conditions, and for what purpose. This helps you enforce boundaries and reduce the risk of scope creep or misuse. Next, require compliance with your organization's security and privacy policies. Don't assume that external parties will bring their own standards. You need to hold them accountable to your internal policies, especially if they're handling regulated or sensitive data. Make it a requirement for all third parties to complete onboarding security training. This ensures they understand your acceptable use policies, reporting procedures, and handling of confidential information before they begin their engagement. You should also include confidentiality, data handling, and non-disclosure agreements. These clauses legally bind the third party to protect your information during and after the engagement. Without these agreements in place, you risk data exposure with no legal recourse. Finally, outline the consequences for non-compliance or breaches. Be explicit about penalties, contract termination conditions, or potential legal actions. This demonstrates that your organization takes security seriously and expects the same from its partners. If the vendor will have access to sensitive systems or data, make sure the agreement includes audit rights. This gives you the ability to verify that they're following required controls, especially when something seems off or during routine compliance checks. By embedding these controls directly into third-party agreements, you're not just managing risk, you're establishing a culture of accountability beyond your own walls. When it comes to access control, you must treat external parties just as seriously as you would internal staff. Their outsider status doesn't exempt them from your security expectations. In fact, it makes their access even more important to manage with precision. Start by provisioning access based on the principle of least privilege. Assign only the minimum permissions required for the task at hand, and make sure access is granted through formal onboarding processes. Always verify identity first, and ensure each contractor or vendor has individual, auditable credentials. Shared or anonymous accounts should never be allowed. You should also enforce time-bound access for project-based work. Set clear start and end dates for access, and use automated expiration wherever possible. This helps prevent lingering accounts that could be exploited after a contract ends. Ensure segregation of duties is maintained to avoid conflicts of interest. Don't allow a single third-party individual to both develop and deploy code, or to manage and audit the same system. Break responsibilities across roles to reduce the risk of unauthorized or unethical activity. Implement approval workflows for any escalated access requests. If a vendor or consultant needs elevated privileges, route the request through a documented process with multiple layers of approval. This protects you from rushed or poorly justified access assignments. Finally, you must monitor third-party access continuously. Set reminders for periodic reviews, and confirm that all access is revoked immediately when the engagement ends. Your ability to track and close the access lifecycle is key to protecting your environment from unmanaged risk. By applying these controls consistently, you're ensuring that external access remains limited, justifiable, and accountable every step of the way. Contractors and vendors aren't immersed in your organization's culture the way employees are, which means you have to bring them up to speed quickly and deliberately. As a security leader, it's your responsibility to make sure third-party personnel are aware of the rules, expectations, and risks from the moment they come on board. Start by requiring training on acceptable use of systems. External users must understand how to responsibly access and interact with your infrastructure, including any restrictions around personal use, remote access, or data storage. You must also train them on how to report incidents or suspicious behavior. Don't assume they'll know what to do if something feels off. Teach them how to escalate security concerns promptly and who to contact in your organization. Ensure that they are trained on data classification and handling policies, whether they're dealing with public, internal, confidential, or regulated data. They need to know how to treat each type with the appropriate level of care and control. Include compliance expectations in their training, especially if your organization operates under regulations like GDPR or PCI DSS. Help them understand what these frameworks require and how their behavior must align with both your internal policies and external obligations. Lastly, always keep a formal record of training completion for each third-party individual. This becomes part of your due diligence documentation and reinforces that you've taken reasonable steps to ensure compliance and reduce risk. By enforcing structured security training for all external parties, you're not just protecting systems. You're establishing a baseline of accountability and awareness for everyone who interacts with your environment. Once third parties are onboarded, your responsibility shifts to monitoring and control enforcement. Ensure that your SEM, audit logs, and access review processes are tracking contractor activity. Pay close attention to accounts with elevated privileges or access to regulated data. Schedule periodic access reviews to validate that third-party users still require access and conduct post-engagement audits to confirm data was handled correctly and all access was removed. If possible, log and isolate third-party activity in sandboxed or segmented environments to reduce risk exposure. When a contract ends, whether it's a planned conclusion or a sudden termination, you must act swiftly and systematically to close out the relationship without leaving security gaps. Start by revoking all credentials and system access immediately. Don't wait for the official exit interview or final invoice. Every minute of delay increases the risk of unauthorized access or data exposure. Coordinate with IT to disable logins, VPN access, shared credentials, and any connected third-party integrations. Next, collect or securely wipe all organizational assets that were issued to the vendor. This includes laptops, storage devices, mobile phones, and even printed materials. If the work was remote, use device management tools to remotely lock or erase sensitive data before retrieving the hardware. You also need to ensure that all confidential information is returned or destroyed securely. Request written confirmation of data disposal or require that it be returned to your designated contact in a protected format. This is especially important if the vendor had access to regulated, classified, or proprietary data. Be sure to document the completion of the offboarding process. Maintain records of revoked access, returned assets, signed exit documents, and any final communications. This provides a defensible audit trail and ensures that no step was missed. Finally, you should reinforce any ongoing obligations outlined in the NDA or service agreement. Remind the vendor in writing that confidentiality clauses and data protection responsibilities remain in effect beyond the end of the contract, and confirm that your internal systems reflect the relationship as closed. By managing offboarding thoroughly, you protect your organization's assets, reputation, and legal standing, even after the relationship ends. So, what's your leadership takeaway? Managing third-party personnel is not just a legal or operational task, it's a security responsibility. When you apply the same diligence to vendors, consultants, and contractors as you do to internal staff, you prevent unauthorized access and insider risks, protect sensitive data and intellectual property, maintain compliance with security frameworks and regulations, preserve trust and control, even when control is shared. Always remember, you can outsource the service, but never the risk.